Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and Nintendo has finally revealed to us why Tears of the Kingdom was delayed last year into this year. Many of us are already enjoying the game is already out, it hasn't been delayed post-release, that's not possible. But, initially the game was supposed to come out last year, and in March of 2022, they put out a development update video. At the time it was just called the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and they announced that they made the decision to delay the game. And we never actually had a reason why, we were left to speculate and wonder. But now we finally know. And that's what we're talking about today. But before we go further, let me point out that we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It's going to be a tall task, but if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and with your help, we might have a chance. So this information is actually coming from the Washington Post. But basically, according to Gene Park on Twitter, Eiji Aonuma said when he announced in March 2022 a delay for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the game was pretty much complete. The last year was spent on polish, making sure the wild physics of the game just work. So that's what it is. It was about polishing the game and making sure it works. That's why it was pushed. It wasn't pushed because they were saving it for a new system. It wasn't pushed for some sort of other weird reason like they were afraid of Pokemon sales getting in the way. It was purely for polish. And while we're talking about the news of this delay happening back in March of 2022, I think it's important to note that the game wasn't delayed a whole year. It was delayed likely about half a year. Tears of the Kingdom was likely going to be one of the big holiday releases for 2022, but it was pushed to May, so just a half-year delay. They just added maybe 6 months to the overall development cycle to make sure the game runs right. And for many, this might be quite refreshing to hear, because in this industry where there's so much AAA games that have been developed for such a long time, a lot of them come out and they are big, buggy, glitchy messes. One of the best examples of this is Cyberpunk. Very unfortunate circumstance, that game was in development for a long time, a lot of people worked really hard on it, but it just wasn't ready. And we waited a very long time for Tears of the Kingdom. It was the longest wait between two major Zelda games ever. So, while it was a long wait, in some ways you can argue it was definitely worth it, because Tears of the Kingdom is not a buggy, glitchy mess. Yes, there are some glitches that people are taking advantage of, but it almost feels like they were intended. There's nothing that's really impacting the overall quality of the game. I'm sure there is something out there, I'm sure some of you have experienced some type of glitch or something. Compared to most open world games, Tears of the Kingdom runs incredibly well. And when you factor in that not only is Tears of the Kingdom but an open world game, but a very massive open world game in terms of the verticality, and there's all these crazy physics systems and abilities involved that no other game really can match, and when you also consider that it's all layered upon each other, this level of polish is actually kind of hard to believe. Many developers are just shocked that Nintendo was able to accomplish this. And let's also point out that Tears of the Kingdom was on the Nintendo Switch, dated hardware. They got all this to run pretty darn well on the Switch. Are there people complaining that maybe it could have a higher resolution, better shadow effects, better texture detail, all these things? For sure. People want better visuals, better performance. That's to be expected, especially for the Switch. But the game still looks and runs pretty good relative to the system. It's still something that wows and impresses left and right, at least for me, and I'm sure many of you as well. This is a special circumstance that should be celebrated. This is a huge game. But it also goes to show that Nintendo holds some of their projects to a special standard. I'm not going to say that every single one of their games is of a level of polish that goes beyond everyone else, because you look at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and clearly that's the exact opposite. But there is a difference there. That wasn't made by Nintendo. That was made by Game Freak, who's not owned by Nintendo. Nintendo has a stake in Pokemon. Pokemon will always be on Nintendo, excluding for mobile smartphone stuff. And you're always going to see Pokemon in Smash and things like that because Pokemon is part Nintendo. But Nintendo is not responsible for the development of the mainline Pokemon games, unfortunately, because if they were, maybe it would be a little bit better. And who knows, after the atrocity that was Scarlet and Violet and how there were apologies made by Nintendo, they may have decided to step in somewhat. We shall see what the future holds. But anyways, for the most part, Nintendo games are of a higher quality when it comes to polish and a lack of glitches. They make sure they come out complete, especially when it comes to something like Zelda. Now, it comes at the cost of having to wait a ridiculous amount of time for the game. As I said earlier, between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it's been the longest wait between major Zeldas ever. Now, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are also the largest games ever. Tears of the Kingdom is a massive game, chock full of content left and right. It's almost overwhelming. It is actually a little overwhelming, but in a good way. I think I'm almost okay with waiting this long. It does make me concerned that we may have to wait like 7 years for the next major Zelda, but there are other things to consider. While I think the extra 6 months of polish should be expected, I'm okay with Nintendo delaying things to make sure they are right. That is fine, even though there's that famous quote from Miyamoto that I'm going to butcher, but it's something along the lines of, a delayed game is eventually good, because now we can just patch things. It's better for a game to come out and be right, to be polished, and to be the experience we were supposed to get. Like, that makes sense. We shouldn't have to wait time after release for the game to be made in a certain way. But I do wonder how long we're gonna have to wait for the next Zelda. I understand the pandemic should also be taken into account here. That surely delayed the game somewhat, maybe a year if not more. But with these Zelda games getting bigger and bigger, and them ensuring quality, which they absolutely should do, they're not going to release the games until they are ready. And that could be a long time. There is a pattern that we're seeing that each major Zelda is taking longer and longer to make. So this game, we had to wait more than 6 years. Are we going to have to wait 7 for the next Zelda? Does that mean that the next time we're talking about playing the next new Zelda game, it won't be until 2030? Some part of me wants to believe that it'll be a little bit sooner, and maybe that's just a blind optimism or a naive hope. But I also gotta think Nintendo doesn't want to have to wait another 7 years for a next big Zelda. I think, again, the pandemic delayed things. Maybe we just have to wait 6 years. Maybe somehow they can pull it off in 5. Maybe they've established something with the physics here, and they can do other changes in other ways that won't require as much time left to polish on all of that. But of course, do we want to wait just for another Zelda, or do we want the next Zelda to be something that is also in question for one of the greatest games ever made? Because that's what Breath of the Wild was, that's what Tears of the Kingdom is. It would be amazing if they can continue with the next big Zelda also being as impressive. But we'll see. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.